Yes, there's a whole lot of spite that gets added to this cake.
I don't think I would call it a revenge recipe.
Hey everyone, I'm Claire. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I'm showing you a recipe that's very near and dear to my heart. It is St. Louis Gooey Butter Cake. This is a specialty of my hometown, St. Louis, and it is a coffee cake with this vanilla-y, sweet, gooey topping and a yeasted base. It's super, super delicious and just something that I grew up eating and is one of my favorites, and I'm excited to show you and introduce it to you at home. So I'm from St. Louis, and that's a town that has a number of quirky food traditions that are hyper specific to St. Louis. So things like toasted ravioli, which are breaded fried ravioli that you dip in marinara sauce, St. Louis style pizza with Provel cheese. But my favorite as a lover of dessert is gooey butter cake. And I'm gonna show you how to make my version, which is a little less sweet, but so good and very true to the original. When I was a kid, well, when I was a teenager, so my friends and I, we weren't the coolest. We didn't have the most plans on the weekends, so we would entertain ourselves by having baking competitions. We would pick a theme and all bake something and bring it to someone's house, and then we would like appoint a judge. And like at that point, it wasn't like really a thing, but we would sort of like declare a winner and then hang out and watch a movie. So one time it was cakes. And I remember this so well. I made my mom take me to the grocery store, and she probably spent like $50 on ingredients, and I made this like very elaborate chocolate layer cake. And then my friend Jo, her entry into the baking competition was a gooey butter cake that she made from a mix, which no shame, but I remember she said that she messed up the mix the first time, and her mom had to go out and buy her another mix so that she could make it. And then she won. She was declared the winner. And I remember being like, I can't believe I lost this competition to someone who A, made it from a mix, and B, messed up the first version and had to do it again. So I have to confront Jo about this, and I want her to try this version. So we are going to make that happen, hopefully. We're still friends. Have not forgotten. In terms of special equipment, I use a stand mixer. You could do it by hand. You'll just have to like mix a little longer, and then you'll need a 9x13 pan. Typically, I discourage people from baking in glass, but this is one recipe where if you have a glass baking dish, it's actually useful for a couple different reasons. And then that's pretty much it. Ingredients. It looks like a lot of ingredients, but really it's the same ingredient in two different places because we have a recipe for the yeasted coffee cake base and then the topping. So it's really straightforward stuff. Unsalted butter, sugar, milk, all-purpose flour, egg, brown sugar, a little bit of heavy cream for the topping, vanilla, salt, and an important ingredient in the topping is corn syrup, which helps to keep it really gooey. That's really it. I'm gonna show you how to put together the yeasted cake base. Like I say every single time, the first thing we do is proof the yeast, so it's just a teaspoon. I'm gonna use a 1/4 cup of warm water. The book, often I say, the instructions I give are to like warm whatever liquid you're using to proof in a saucepan, but I have pretty hot tap water, and you don't even want something that hot, so I just run the water until I feel it warm to the touch. And then I have to walk over here and not spill it. Okay. So 1/4 cup of water goes in, and then I whisk to dissolve everything. Because I'm not adding sugar to this mixture, the yeast it's not gonna bubble up really actively. You only get lots of foaming when you have the presence of sugar, which is food for the yeast. So I'm not looking for, like, I'm not gonna see bubbling, so that's not the indicator here. I'm really just looking for this to smell very yeasty and be kind of like cloudy and a little bit puffed, but I'm not gonna get a lot of activity here. So I'm gonna put that right there. To this, I'm adding my milk, my eggs, sugar, diamond kosher salt, 1 teaspoon. If you're using Morton, give it a 1/2 teaspoon. Then I'm gonna add 2 cups of flour. So I'm gonna have a 1/2 cup that I'm gonna hold back, and I'll show you why. And I'm gonna mix this together. And then with the mixer running, I'm going to add my butter. This is a very calorie dense cake. But it's also, because of that, it's very rich, and so, you know, it's best when cut into really small pieces, but I think it's worth it. All right. So here's what we have. This is still kind of batter-like. It's still basically liquid, you know, it's pourable. And now we're gonna add the rest of the flour and use the dough hook and create something that's not quite a dough, but not quite a batter. With something that's yeasted, like you always have to develop a certain amount of gluten for the thing to actually rise. So that's why I'm using the dough hook, and I just want to develop this batter dough hybrid a little bit. So with this running, I'm gonna add the remaining flour a tablespoon at a time because flour amounts are often inexact, and really what you're going for is the proper texture. Hello, kitty. Hello, Maya. I gotta wash my hands so I just pet the cat. This is right where I want it to be. The dough batter is gathered around the hook and pulling away from the sides a little bit. So I like this texture. I'm gonna stop it. If for whatever reason you're at this point and you still have something that feels really liquid, you can add a little more flour. And now this is gonna rise. So I like to cover it. Sometimes I use these silicone bowl covers so I don't have to use plastic. So depending on the temperature of your kitchen, this could take an hour to 2 hours to rise. I'm gonna put it in a warm spot to encourage that to rise. Don't put it in like a very warm spot. Don't put it on your radiator or anything because the butter in the dough batter could kind of melt and then get a little greasy. So put it in a slightly warm spot to rise. While that dough is rising, you can prepare your pan. So I know I talked about putting it in a glass pan. I have my glass 13 by 9 pan in my fridge with the batter already set up, so I'm using the only other 13 by 9 I have, which is metal. The reason I generally don't like to bake in glass is because glass takes a long time to heat up. It's not an effective heat conductor compared to metal. The glass gets very, very hot and retains the heat, so when you pull something out of the oven, it continues to bake, and what often happens is something that you thought was done is actually overcooked because it continued to cook in the glass and you get like overdone edges. There's some baked goods where actually having more browning and doneness around the edges is a good thing, and gooey butter cake is one of them. So this is one recipe where it is effective to bake in glass, and also it helps you better gauge the rising of the dough. I have some room temperature butter here, and I'm coating the pan in a very, very generous layer on the bottom and sides. This is the gooey butter dough batter that I made last night, and I let it rise in the fridge overnight, so it has nearly doubled in size. You can see when I press it, I know that it's risen and there's air in it because I press my finger and it springs back and only leaves a slight indentation. So that's how I know that this is risen, plus it's just, you know, I can tell by the volume difference. So I'm going to press this batter into this pan. So just stretch this all the way to the edges and across the bottom. This was really easy to press into this because it was cold, but at the same time, if you're using room temp batter, it should also be very extensible, and it might just be sticky, but you shouldn't have a hard time getting it into an even layer. It'll look really thin, but actually this cake bakes up really tall in the oven. So you didn't do anything wrong. It's normal for this to seem a little bit meager across the bottom. This is the point at which, if you're making this recipe and you're gonna bake it the next day, this goes into the fridge and rests overnight. And we finish the first rise. This is where it's gonna go through its second rise. Then all you do in the morning is create the topping, put it over the cake, and bake it. So I have one that I set up last night, already went through its first rise, and is now risen in the pan, and that's in glass. I'm gonna show you another reason why glass is really useful for this recipe. So go ahead and cover this. Here is the one from yesterday. Now, when I pressed the dough into the pan, I put a piece of tape on the side, and I marked the level of the dough inside the pan. So this is just a very useful way of being able to gauge how this dough is rising. We want to let this get a little bit taller, but while we're letting this rise, we can make the topping. The first thing I want to do is mix together my liquid ingredients. The topping, it's hard to describe what this mixture is. It is basically an extremely buttery, loose batter of sorts. And also with the addition of corn syrup. And corn syrup, the function of corn syrup in this recipe is to basically create a kind of soft chewiness that doesn't harden when it cools, and is like very key to the texture of the topping. So I have a 1/4 cup of heavy cream, a full tablespoon of vanilla, and please just use the real stuff. Or make your own, foreshadowing. I hate measuring out corn syrup. It's not that big of a deal if you do a little more or less. So I'm gonna call that 2 tablespoons, 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter, then 1 cup of granulated sugar, and a little bit of brown sugar. Okay, so I'm gonna mix this together and let it get light and fluffy. I'm gonna add my salt now. I need 1 teaspoon. Yeah, I mean, oh, yeah, just put it up on the screen, you know? So we're following basic like cake making procedure, creaming the ingredients, adding the egg, and then we add the wet and dry ingredients. Usually for the most evenly mixed batter, we alternate wet and dry, starting and ending with dry. So I'm just adding half the flour. Then I'll slowly add this corn syrup, vanilla, cream mixture, and then the remaining flour. Then often just to ensure thorough mixing, I'll like give it a couple of those. Now, I'm gonna fill my pastry bag. Again, having it stand up in any kind of container like this makes it very, very easy. Maybe Maya will get on the Instagram account Round Animals. Truly one of my favorites. She's quite rotund. Okay, lift up the sides and try to avoid dragging any of the batter onto the upper part of the bag. And then lift it out. We have our filled bag. And then this container is clean. This is where a scraper comes in handy, one of the many uses for a bench or bowl scraper. You can use this to further eliminate air bubbles and air pockets by just forcing the mixture down into the bag. This might be one where I'm using every single piece of essential equipment because I'm about to use, some powdered sugar. I'm snipping maybe like a 1.5 inch opening. And by the way, save this plastic. It's perfectly good. You can see that there's big air bubbles. When I do the poke test, it springs back. This cake is risen. So to that end, I'm gonna preheat my oven because this is basically ready to go. So you want a rack in the center, preheat to 350. Gather the ends of the bag and then twist, and that will force the mixture in the bag to the very end and you can start piping. So as you go, keep twisting. So I still have more. So I'm gonna go like here. Okay, that was everything from the bag. And now, with Count Spatula, I'm gonna smooth this into a single layer, and this is very important. You want to make sure that along the edges of your 13x9 pan, that you are anchoring the topping to the side of the pan. And the reason you want it to touch is because something magical happens when the cake bakes and the topping that touches the sides gets really brown and crunchy. That is like the best part of the cake. So I'm pulling off the tape. Don't forget to pull off the tape before you bake because you don't really want to bake a piece of tape, although I've done it before, nothing happens. My oven's on 350. I'm gonna put this guy in and that'll go 30 to 40 minutes. So my idea is to make, obviously, my homemade version and then make the boxed version. And then I want to give Jo a chance to blind taste test both. And I want to hear her reactions. I want her to tell me what is like closer to her memory of St. Louis Gooey Butter Cake and which she prefers. I'm pretty sure she's going to be able to tell the difference. It's probably going to be like night and day. But I don't know. We'll see what she says about it. I'm at the low end of the time range for the cake, so it's been about 30 minutes. And I didn't look, but I could smell it. So then I just peeked, and it looks done. So I'm going to pull it out and show it to you. Ooh. Oh, you guys, it's so magical. So you can see the cake rose quite a bit. I like the glass because I can see that there's nice golden brown color around the edges. This is the perfect doneness. It's still pale and even a little bit shiny in the center. And when I pulled it out of the oven, there was a very, very slight wobble. So I haven't overcooked the center, but I have beautiful browning around the edges. So this is where I said be really certain that you are anchoring the topping to the sides of the pan, because I have this is the best part of the cake, this caramelized crunchy edge. And then, now the cake is cooling, you can see that it's starting to fall and create these like ravines of gooiness in the cake. So I love the doneness. The cake looks nicely baked along the sides and bottom. I think it's going to be perfect. I just have to let it cool. The cake has had a chance to cool, and it's further settled, so you can really see the ravines of gooey topping. This little part here, it's kind of like a topographical map. This is classic gooey butter cake, is this crazy surface. So now I'm gonna put the finishing touches on the gooey butter cake so I can eat it. And I'm using my very convenient dusting wand. So now it's a topographical map with snow on it. With the right amount of baking, I think this probably could have gone like 2 minutes less time actually. And there still would have been browning, but the cake will pull away from the sides. So like this edge in particular, it contracted a bit. So that's normal, you'll notice that. And I'm gonna cut out a slice. This is what we're looking for, see that gooiness. And here too, oh, that looks really good. I think it actually overproofed, and what happened is the cake got so light that it kind of switched places with the topping in the oven, which you'll see sometimes. So like really the gooey layer is supposed to sit on top. Here it's sunk a little bit to the bottom. So that just happens with the natural kind of like irregularity of the baking. Every version's a little different, but it certainly doesn't affect the flavor. And you can see that the cake itself is not at all dry. It's tender, but it still has a kind of pleasing, like bready texture. Something truly magical happens between the butter and the vanilla, and the cream, and the brown sugar. It is, I don't know how to describe it. Like the flavor of this cake is gooey butter flavor. You kind of just have to make it and try it for yourself and see why this is like every St. Louisan's favorite recipe. It's just so good. This is one of my favorite recipes in Dessert Person, a favorite among favorites really, and something that I grew up eating. I hope it becomes a favorite in your family too. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. What's the thing? That's the thing. All right. I'll be back here later baking more stuff. Put this down. Eat that later. Have you had breakfast yet?
No,
How do you feel about sweet breakfast?
I love it.
Yeah?
I was doing that thing where, you know, you do chocolate croissant to start the week.
That thing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
and then this week I didn't do it because I didn't have time.
So you start your week off with the chocolate croissant.
Yeah, but usually I like to pick it apart, you know, like a bird.
Uh-huh.
But this one is so good that you can't pick it.
Yum. So you didn't do that this week.
No.
So we're gonna make up for it. Okay, I want to first talk to you about, remember in high school
Mm.
when we did the baking competition?
Yes.
Describe the one where you won.
I won fair and square. So this is a cool thing that lots of teens do is baking competitions. When other people are actually literally going to parties and smoking pot, some people do baking competitions.
Right.
But everybody did their own thing. I think you did a dark chocolate raspberry layer cake. Okay, overkill. And then Lily did a low-fat blueberry layer cake.
They have poppy seeds.
Yeah, poppy, or maybe
Yeah.
it's lemon. Maybe it's lemon.
Okay, and what did you make?
And I made a St. Louis tradition. I thought, why not get back to my roots? And I made a gooey butter cake that pleased the crowd.
And how did you make it?
Just kind of, you know, whipped it up.
Didn't it came from a box, right?
Well, the recipe called for a box cake mix.
Right, okay.
And that's the authentic recipe, and you
Right.
can't argue with it. That's like, how do you make pancakes with a mix?
No.
What are you talking about?
No. So, okay, so it was a cake, it was a box cake mix. It wasn't like a gooey butter
No,
mix.
it was a box cake mix.
So you followed a recipe that used the box cake mix.
Yeah, pretty creative actually, if you ask me.
Okay, and now, if I recall correctly, you messed up the first.
I think, yeah, my mom had to help me make a new one. She made the second one because I didn't really do it. So
okay. All right.
Yeah.
It comes out.
Yeah.
Okay, but now I want you to try 2 versions of St. Louis gooey butter cake. Tell me what you think.
Okay.
I made both versions.
Already I can tell you the color is accurate.
Okay.
Now I appreciate you giving me corner pieces.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean this is the color you're looking for. Okay.
How would you describe the color?
I'd say it's yellow. and that's it. That's and this crust, this is what you're looking for too. I don't really know how to describe food I'm finding.
I feel like it's like shiny and crackly.
Yeah, and got a film.
Yes.
Like a hard film. That's obviously what you're looking for. Okay, so I take a bite? Okay. This is it. This is the winning one.
No, you didn't even.
This is it. This came from St. Louis. This is it. There's no question to me. This tastes like it's got the good cake mix in it. Yeah, this is it.
Okay, so do you feel like you even want to taste the other one?
I mean, I will, but this is it for sure.
Oh no. This really didn't go the way I was hoping.
Okay, so this doesn't look like, this is not gooey butter cake. This is not what we're looking at here. This this looks like some kind of German delicacy, I'll tell you that. You got 2 layers. This one you got 3 layers. Cake, goo, film. This is just cake, and honestly not even goo. Almost more like, what would you call it? Soft cake. So, I mean, I'll eat this, but I can tell you, I mean, it looks good.
That's a good bite right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good cake.
But
Would I call it gooey butter cake?
oh.
Listen, here's what I'm looking for. Yellow dye.
Okay.
Here's the problem with St. Louis foods. They taste like shit, but you've been so accustomed to the shit that your brain is tricked forever.
I completely agree.
Pizza is pizza, which is the most inedible food in the world.
Yeah. I always tell that to people. I'm like, I can't recommend it to you. Like, don't try it.
It's also got
but
a
I
film.
love it.
Another film-based food. Filmy cheese of a sweet tomato paste, and then a
cracker crust.
And that's what I thought. Pizza, yum yum. So when I think gooey butter cake, this obviously is a better cake. We know that.
Okay. All right.
We know that.
That was kind of all I wanted to hear you say.
Yeah, I understand that.
I suppose it was easier than I even imagined for you to tell the difference between the 2.
This is like you give me nachos and you pour, hockey cheese on it. And
What's
then,
hockey cheese?
the cheese from the hockey games.
Like the liquid?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, these are really good nachos. Knowing that they're bad nachos.
How much of this food are you eating?
I eat a lot of crap.
Yeah.
I've been getting into protein powders.
What are you putting it in?
Well, apparently you can make cakes out of protein powders.
Oh, yeah.
If you microwave them, so think about next time making something.
Oh, maybe in the next book.
This is obviously a good cake.
Okay, thank you.
I think
That's all I wanted to hear.
You're just, it's like you're making, ring pops with metal.
Right, like a real diamond.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that 20 years later.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm not.
Please, no
I'm
numbers. No numbers.
I'm not still upset about the bake-off, where you won with a box mix and made gooey butter cake, because gooey butter cake really is delicious, and I still even kind of like that version. So
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
this is our hometown favorite, and even though we live in the big city now, it's still delicious.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed.
Well, you can take that home with you.
Thank you so much. I can't
Keep the
believe
container.
I mean, these are really good containers.
I know, right? Here, put that one in that one,
Oh,
and then take it home that way.
okay.
And then see what Mike thinks.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, Mike has trash taste just like me, so that's kind of how we get along.